and some of them who are not here, starting from Major General S.K. Biswas, Professor Matwankar, Professor Satyanarayana, Colonel R.N. Basu, Major General Munindra Srivastav. On the dais, Rear Admiral V.K. Singh, General N.K. Parmar, who came yesterday, and some of them who are not here, Dr. P.C. Chaube, some of them who are no more, like late Professor R.P. Sinha, and Dr. Jagdish Chandran, who is in Bangalore but probably unable to come here because of his ailment. It is because of them that I stand before you today. They taught me the language of administration. They taught me how to talk and how to walk the talk. So thank you very much. Professor Agarwal is smiling there because it is from him that first time I was exposed to organizational behavior and to management of critical services like OT and intensive care unit. I thank you, all of you, very much from the bottom of my heart, because I hope in some way I can measure up to your expectations. Also, I dedicate this to the students to whom I hope I have been able to pass on your legacy in certain measures. Sir, my time starts now. Before I begin the subject of evolution of accreditation in India, I must clarify certain definitions for those who have been uninitiated into this subject. I'll only define 3 things. They are difficult to define, but I'll make it as simple as possible. The first definition is that of quality. What is quality in healthcare? We'll define quality in healthcare as adherence, a degree of adherence to predetermined standards which have been established by an organized body. We'll define accreditation as an external review of quality which is based upon 4 principal components. The first, it is based on predetermined and written standards. The second, it is carried out by your own peers. The third, it is regulated and legislated by an independent autonomous body. And fourth, it aims at organizational development. Having clarified these definitions, I will go on to the humble beginnings of accreditation evolution in this country. In early to late 90s, we had various seminars and workshops that were organized on quality assurance, medical and nursing audit, total quality management, equipment management, hospital architecture, and accreditation by All India Institute of Medical Sciences, by various Armed Forces Medical College and other colleges which had Department of Hospital Administration with them. Some of them were organized by the Academy of Hospital Administration, and I also remember one of them which was organized, which focused on quality assurance, medical audit and accreditation by none other than Rear Admiral V.K. Singh in AMC Center and College, Lucknow, based upon which a document was prepared which gave some insight into the process of accreditation. Then came out the BI standards, in which my good friend Dr. Siddharth Satpathy is still involved, the head of Department of Hospital Administration sitting here. But it started in early 90s, where they laid down standards for 30 beds, 100 beds, for equipment management, for blood transfusion. Also, there were simultaneously ISO certifications which was focusing on various service-related processes. This was the beginnings in early to late 90s. And that's a time when my eyes were opening to the art and science of hospital administration. Then came the turnover to the century. At the beginning of the century, suddenly we found a hospital having all over the name of JCI splashed all over. That was in Apollo, New Delhi. And then it dawned onto the public that there is something known as accreditation. Simultaneously, the Quality Council of India had NABL accreditation going for accreditation of the laboratories, which also included medical laboratories, for which they only applied the ISO 15189 for assessing those laboratories. Thereafter, all these advertisements felt that there's something should be there in this country for accrediting the hospitals, which should be their very own. What were the driving factors? One was legislation. Second was there were pressure on the government for medical tourism. The government asked, what should we do? Which hospital should I choose to go to if I am a patient? The corporate came and asked that when we go abroad for medical tourism, they ask us, are you accredited? So she said, what do we tell them? So all these driving factors came into the being, the insurance authorities, the CGHS and the ECHS, they wanted to know what criteria should we follow for empanelment of hospitals. So there was a felt need for having country-specific standards, and the Academy of Hospital Administration was approached to make the first document under the stewardship of the present patron, General S.K. Biswas, who tirelessly worked along with a team of people, of which I have been fortunate to be a member of their team, to prepare the first draft accreditation standards for this country. So the contribution of Academy of Hospital Administration may not be known to the environment, but was immense in going towards the present formation of NABH. Subsequently, this task was entrusted by the industry as well as the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to the Quality Council of India under the dynamic leadership of Dr. Girdhar Gyani. Then he approached the Academy again, and Academy said, you form a task committee to look into the details. We have made these standards, and they nominated certain members on their behalf. So the first technical committee which was formed had 3 members of the Academy of Hospital Administration. One was Dr. Siddharth Satpathy, second was myself, and the third was Dr. Bidhan Das. Along with this, there was some clinician, Dr. Murli, who was a neurophysician from Manipal Hospital, and that time from Apollo Indraprastha, which was the first accredited hospital in the country by JCI, Dr. Umesh Gupta, who was a vascular surgeon. And then we had an engineer, Dr. Deepak Bandopadhyay. We made this committee, and this meeting was organized by Quality Council of India in June 2005 in India Habitat Center, where AHA standards were formally handed over to this Quality Council of India, and then a technical committee was established. By virtue of my seniority, I was made the coordinating and the chairperson of this technical committee. We were giving the terms of reference to make implementable standards for quality healthcare delivery in this country, which would be applicable both to corporate and public sector hospital, and should also be amenable to international recognition. A tough task. However, based upon all these efforts, NABH was born. We remember people thought, NABH, why accreditation in this country? Who will do it? So many obstacles. Nobody wanted to be a party to this effort. But the first set of standards were prepared within 3 months. They were reviewed by a panel of experts from 32 a panel of experts from all over the country in both clinical, managerial and administrative fields. Pilot studies were carried out in 1 corporate and 1 government hospital, and final standards were prepared and launched in the end 2005. NABH conducted sensitization programs all across the nation and carried out assessor training program for getting a pool of assessors across the country. The objective of these standards were to provide a framework for quality assurance and quality improvement, focus on patient safety and quality of patient care, set basic standards that all organizations must achieve, and to be revised periodically and raise the bar. Also to achieve international recognition. The progress, the first set of standards had 10 chapters, 100 standards and 503 objective elements. Since it had to an international element, it was forwarded to International Society of Quality in Healthcare. They had some suggestions to make. Based upon ISQA principles, these standards were modified, and a second set of standards along with the guidebook were released, and SCO started applying for accreditation. The journey commenced. Thereafter, NABH took shape. It had an organogram. It started with the standards offered by AHA, modified to suit the Indian nation, and then an organizational structure was formed in which the technical committee was prepared for making these draft standards and modifying them, an accreditation committee for reviewing the assessor report, a panel of assessors was there to go and do the assessments, an appeals committee for addressing the appeals against assessments, and a secretariat for looking after the day-to-day functioning of the NABH. This is the process. Those who have gone through it, you are supposed to forward an application. The applications are screened for their accuracy, for their completeness, and any clarifications are taken from the healthcare organizations. Then the pre-assessment survey is held, which will actually tell you the guidelines of what is going to happen in the final assessment. Based upon the deficiencies observed and the closure report, then an assessment survey is carried out. Then their deficiencies observed and closure report is submitted to the accreditation committee, who thereafter either recommends an accreditation decision or recommends a verification visit, or maybe recommends subsequently some more actions to be taken by the healthcare organization before their application can be considered for accreditation and the decision is arrived at. Then NABH expands. From healthcare organizations, it went to nursing homes, the smaller healthcare organizations, then standards for blood bank and blood centers and blood transfusion services, then for PSCs and community health centers, wellness centers, oral substitution therapy centers, dental centers, radio imaging, and Ayurveda hospitals. So such was the expanse in a period of another 3 years. Does it do it only for its own purpose? No. NABH is a non-profit making body. It provides support to the government. It started empaneling hospitals for CGHS and ECHS, had MOU with Gujarat, MP, Delhi, and Kerala and Tamil Nadu to facilitate upgradation of district hospitals. Then NABH developed certain international linkages. It became an institutional member of the ISQA. It became a member of the ISQA Accreditation Council. It became a member of the International Steering Committee of WHO Collaborating Center for Patient Safety as a nominee of ISQA Accreditation Council. It got on the board of Asian Society for Quality in Healthcare in Kuala Lumpur, and it got representation to the Advisory Board of Medical Tourism Association, USA. Thereafter, it got an international arm. It has conducted sensitization programs in Philippines, Pakistan, and UAE. UAE has desired hand-holding for developing their own standards. And there are 2 hospitals in Philippines that have already been accredited by NABH. It gets its global recognition in the form of ISQA. Its 3rd edition of 2011, it has got the recognition till 2016. NABH responds to local needs. It introduces Safe Eye certification, that is, introducing infection control programs in various hospitals. It introduces nursing excellence standards to improve the quality of nursing care. It introduces pre-accreditation entry-level standards for SCO and SCO, in which the chairperson here has been a very, very active member. It modifies and updates website for online application and submission of SSA reports. It introducing training programs on medical audit, medication management, patient safety, legal compliances, and communication workshop. What is the current situation of NABH accreditation? You can see we have 435 applicants in addition to the 229 who have been accredited and 2 which are in progressive level of accreditation. And if you can see the slide, we have gone a long way forward from the first hospital which was accredited way back in 2006. So in 8 years, a definite progress has been made. Nursing excellence standards are yet to commence because some amount of training is yet to take place in implementation of these standards. What was the impact? Now, we had only one study which was available to us in respect of an accredited corporate hospital, which said that it has improved patient safety by improving hand hygiene and patient processes. The medication errors have been reduced by 78%, the revenues have increased by 20%, and it has improved employee safety. So we carried out a study by formulating a questionnaire and sending to certain hospitals, covering about 25 hospitals in the country. Out of those 146 hospitals, you know what is, there's a problem in this country of sharing information. So out of 146 hospitals, we actually got data from 36 hospitals. While cross-checking the data from NABH, we found that 12 data were totally wrong and misplaced. So ultimately, we totally selected around 25 hospitals. The breakdown is given here. 16 of them were from corporate and private, 6 were government, and 3 were charitable trust. Out of these, 16 were accredited, 8 were in the process, and 1 had not yet applied but was intending to apply. The parameters that were tested were based upon the level of awareness of quality in this country, what was the level of implementation, the monitoring aspects, and the overall impact of accreditation or introducing quality management systems in their own hospitals. The components tested were various standards of the NABH, mainly on initial assessment, care of patients, medication management, patient rights, healthcare associated infection, biomedical waste management, facility management, and continual quality improvement. The difference in median and p-value using a Kruskal-Wallis test demonstrated that the performance in all the parameters in almost all the components improved in a highly statistically significant manner in all the hospitals after the quality management systems were incorporated. But government and public sector hospitals showed greater degree of improvement since they had no systems in place earlier. And if you see the parameters, you will find that the patient rights, informed consent, HIC manual had a lot of improvement in all the level of parameters. But when you came to antibiotic policy, the level of monitoring improved. They say it had an impact, but they could not show implementation, increase in implementation levels and awareness levels after introduction of antibiotic policy. Standard precautions improved across holistically in all the parameters, so did biomedical waste management. The key clinical indicators were the one on which overall impact was felt a lot. The key managerial indicators, they were all doing it in their own way. They felt there was not much of impact, but they felt that yes, in some way we have been able to view them more analytically and more holistically. Sentinel events concept was missing after introduction of QMS. It had a significant impact. Same thing went to equipment calibration. CPR everybody had in their system, only they did not have monitoring, so monitoring showed a tremendous jump. Same thing, vulnerable patient care, it was there, but there was no monitoring of the patient care, so that also had improved the monitoring. Medical audit, still it is plus minus. Fire safety, again plus minus. Same thing goes to facility maintenance, but medication errors showed a tremendous improvement. See the indicators. Now if we go on the indicators, you will see that generally in most of the, only 12 hospitals submitted indicators. Remaining 13 of those in the ambit of study did not submit their indicators. That is a resistance to share information. So in these hospitals, most of them showed the pink line that you see is the after the implementation of system. In most of the hospitals except one or two, they showed a drop. Same thing, patient satisfaction by and large improved after the accreditation system. Where you see higher degree of improvement, that is hospital number 2, 3 and 6, they are all government hospitals. Same thing on average length of stay did come down. The medication errors surprisingly increased in most of the hospitals. That was because of reporting mechanism improved. Earlier on there was no reporting. What were the constraints? These are the constraints to accreditation, manpower and HR related issues, lack of adequate manpower, lack of their training. Hospitals were housed in old architecture. The operation theatres were not conducive to provide the type of quality of care that NABH required. Everybody felt there was a lack of time in doing quality work. There were logistics constraints. Coordination was required from multiple agencies, and turnaround trained manpower was a constraint. Somebody would post the trained manpower in other places. In government hospital, they would be turned over on a regular basis. So that became a constraint. What were the challenges? Biggest challenge was to overcome the attitudinal changes. Another challenge was to overcome whatever constraints that we just saw. Then making benchmarks for services provided is still a challenge. And implementation of quality assurance programs across the healthcare organization was a challenge. Quality consciousness, we all know, will take, at all levels, will take a lot of time. Sustenance and consistency of efforts will be required, because you may get the accreditation, but then to sustain it, to improve it, it will take more efforts. It's like entry into a system, exit is a bit of a problem. Commitment on a consistent basis is required. Once having entered into the system, you have to remain in it. High rates of turnover require repeated and continual training. Another problem is quality and consistency of assessments and assessors is also a big challenge, because same assessors, same hospital, different assessors give different interpretation of the same standards. What are the opportunities? Creating enabling mechanism to assist hospitals on accreditation, adding value to accredited hospitals in terms of clinical indicators program, quality tools, HIS, education programs for patient safety and employee safety and benchmarking, knowledge sharing with other similar minded organizations, acceptance of accreditation program by consumers, and spreading education and awareness on education on accreditation to health industry, consumers as well as regulators. The final words: accreditation is here to stay. Currently, by definition, it is voluntary, but as time passes, it is likely that just now CGH has started giving higher remuneration to those hospitals which are accredited. Subsequently, it might become mandatory. The initialization phase of accreditation is over. We are now in a phase of consolidation. Initial steps have been difficult, but the journey has begun. This journey, for the interest of this country, has to continue, especially since accreditation is a journey and not a destination. One voice to all of you. Thank you very much, and Jai Hind.
Good morning to you. I thank the organizers, Dr. Nagendra Swamy, Dr. Naren Nath, a personal friend of mine, and Ramaiah is not new to me, that they've given me the opportunity. By the way, my time starts now, because my colleague, so good words he told about me. He's still in uniform, so he believed putting it in the file. I'm out of the uniform, I'm verbally saying so. Why I'm saying so? Co-chair reminded me, 15 minutes later there will be bell. In the next 5 minutes you conclude. Don't worry, I shall conclude. Now let us see what is this innovation. I'll not be sticking, I've got only 6 slides. Generally I speak like a TED style, because, and I generally don't like to use the slide, but Naren Nath and Shalini insisted there have to be few slides. Okay. Innovation has become a buzzword. If you go to the poster exhibitions, 7 posters I found written innovation. I asked them, what is this? Something they spoke. Property dealer is writing. There's a pamphlet I found, Mr. Amen has written, innovative methods of launching conferences. So what is really this innovation? Unfortunately, very few of us know that what is this innovation. And I generally don't like to speak on very basics in the conferences, but knowing that you should not go overboard, I decided some basics also I shall be touching. So you would find that this buzzword, which has been used here and there in every place, innovation is not new to India. My whole talk will depend on a book in USA being published by me in healthcare innovation. So my whole thing is out of that context. 3,600 years back, Aryabhata, the mathematicians, brought the innovation to the world. Many of us do not know that. What he brought? Zero, shunya. And it has a lot of interpretation. If I put 0 in front of 10, 100,000 up to billions years, that it multiplies. And if I put 0, your knowledge is 0, it's a no. You have thoughtless mind, and that becomes meditation, that's a 0. So 0 connotations was brought first in India in 3006 years back, 600 years back, by Aryabhata. The world knows it, but we don't know that this is the concept of innovation. He brought it, how we can play. In medical field, we can say 0 infection rate, 0 medication error, and so on and so forth. 0 waiting time, etc. That is what the application of that is. So let us see in perspective that what is this in my presentation will speak. My presentation will speak these You may note it down. I'm not going to read it. I don't want to cut down my time of 15 minutes in all these things. Anyway, this will be coming across in the slide, and you will see that it is coming. This is one rough definition of innovation. You generally tend to get confused in invention and innovation. Invention is one time. It is something which has come, aircraft has come. And I was aghast to see in Washington, D.C. Museum, it talks about first time aircraft hypothesis came when people talked about Udan Khatola in Indian scripture, Agni Baan in Indian and Chinese scriptures, and the atom bomb came. Many of these concepts come to your mind as a thinking and a hypothesis and translates subsequently into the issues. So one of the definitions I just had brought it is innovation is something which has already happened, and now you're doing make it better, to make it more flavor, have better business proposition, and that's the innovation. Aircraft creation was the invention. Now Virginia gives you innovative travel by somebody can massage your head, go to bar, sleep over, etc. That's the innovation. Some lab who gives you something that morning somebody come take a prick of your blood, evening you can see on internet, it is innovation. So they be very clear what is innovation, and please ask the people when they put it a poster, etc., my younger colleagues, don't use the word if you don't know. Please, we are scientists, management scientists must be done. It's the innovation is that it is something novel, it can be replicated and repeated. If Lal Lab, not that I am advertising for Lal, has brought this concept, the Religer will bring, third person will give, other day out of the business, that evening you can see something on the internet. It produces value both to the innovator and a user. Innovation is like Darwinian evolution, requires variety, repetition, and selection. So that is what we must know. Now if you see innovation, if you remember, there is a model called input, process, output. Innovations are different type. They are in marketing, they are in a process, they are in thinking, etc. I will not go into those details. This model was brought by Dr. Donovan, who was a public health expert. And it's unfortunate, we doctors don't know that, and it is the automobile chaps, it has gone there and they're teaching us input, process, output. When I bring, he's no more, he died 2-3 years back. He had 16 books, more than 100 papers. I have read quite a few of his work. And this Dr. Donovan's work is the one who brought the quality health definition first time in the world. So we doctors are not far behind in many of the concepts. And when I bring these issues, Aryabhata and all that, because they are documented, they say, really? This is what doctors do. Now remember, when you say process, you need to take help of a technology if you want to improve. And that technology is available to us in the world. So this is called input, process, output model. What I am as a patient interested, a good quality care at the lesser cost. That's my output. Input is you go every clinical things, etc. I'm not bothered. And the lean teaches us, which is a concept from automobiles, from Toyota, now gone to the medical only in 15 years back, which teaches how to improve the processes. Studies have shown 70% of the waste is found in the processes. I'm doing one project here in Narayan Hridayalaya to cut down the cost of operations, operation theater, each operation. And we have achieved quite a bit. And in next 2 months, I'm close it up. So how you cut out many processes and cut down the cost, improve the quality. There are innumerable examples even in India. And I have done it when I was in charge of hospital. because of paucity of time, I'll not go into those details. So the technology is the one which you should be able to use it for this purpose. Let's see what is innovation and lean. Lean is very simple. That is the name which was brought. It is not like a black belt, sigma, mathematical model. It is more feminine word, lean. Dr. Agarwal told me I should become lean. I take that comment, but with the company of Dr. Narendranath and all, I doubt I will, because I am coming every month almost and taking his hospitality. Okay, lean is the something cut down. Waste 70%, and you can improve the productivity, you can bring the cut down cost. The Aravind Eye is a glaring example where I have gone as a guest speaker, that how they have cut down the cost. Earlier, the doctor used to do 2 operations. They are all paid. It's a charitable hospital, but the people are paid who are working. Now they are doing 8 operations in 1 hour. Cost cut down, waiting list finished. They realize something which doctor doesn't have to do should be done by the people, nurses and technicians, cleaning, etc. Doctor just puts the lens out. Second, they say, why can't we produce the lens here, etc. And that is Harvard has published it. Oxford has published it. India is being looked up as an innovator. And that one word I would like to say, frugal innovation. Frugal innovation is out of necessity. I'm hungry. I need to have some facility. And that's called frugal innovation. Disruptive innovation is the one when you disrupt everything, something new thinking has come, technology, and you bring down the cost, etc. Word Jugaad has come from India. I don't know how many of you read the book called Jugaad. Anybody? Oh, the very senior people have read it anyway. Jugaad is written by 3 Indians who are US citizens. It gives all, not health. It talks everything. Difference between Jugaad is, it is not very scientific. It is a quick fix method. You find various kinds of Jugaad that, when diesel pump became useless, somebody made a trolley out of it to carry in the farmers. And safety is not a concern. Innovation is a scientific method. Jugaad may be converted into innovation. So the innovation is not a Jugaad, but Jugaad is very much known all over the world now, because the book Jugaad only, I read it because one of the professors in Alto had told me, have you read the word Jugaad? It's a good book. So Indians are carrying the messages. Innovation and lean, they're 2 sides of the same coin. What you get, you want to improve. Innovation, evidence-based medicine, evidence planning, and the lean. Cut down the cost, improve the quality. We have created one hospital called Iris Hospital in Kolkata. I've used help of technology, and now we have, it's a green field, and it has 15-minute discharge time. We have got all kinds of innovative methods. I have cut down energy cost by 1 lakh per month only by regulating air conditioning. At 11 o'clock, daytime comfort zone at 20-21 degree. In the night, no metabolism, no activity. It's 25 degree, 26. So we cut down. I've got a central control room, put it from 21 to 26. This 7 hours cut down gives you energy saving in air conditioning by 1 lakh per month. These small interventions, this is innovation. There's an institute, Angelina Joseph is the not-for-profit in the US, is the vice president. It talks of evidence-based planning. Lean has come, innovation has come, and evidence-based has come at the planning stage itself. And the operational cost you can cut down by 20%. We have written those case studies in those books, Indian setting case studies. So it is feasible that if you plan on this, what you have heard, good as a student, but the word has gone beyond that. Singapore makes a mandatory, a lean expert to be in the planning of the hospital. Middle East is also looking for all this. Innovation, evidence-based planning, and also the lean planning. So difference between that is the concepts or application is there, but ultimate aim is cut down the cost and improve the quality. Well, I will also like to tell you the concept of, before I go to innovation excellence, I'd like to mention to you few things. That what you find in the smartphone, all of us have, most of us have rather, 97,000 medical applications are available on smartphone, only on medical. 97,000. Now, people in the US is saying, all of you who have done it, it's something not acceptable. What is the consumer should put it or not put it. Now they are reviewing everything. They've reviewed 15,000 odd, and they say we'll license it. Because any youngster open a new company and can make application of coaching or whatever. So how far it is accredited, we will talk separately. Okay, so this is what it is, application. The innovation is also related with the generation gaps. Today morning, Sadhguru was talking of with the half an hour he talks in the morning on Saturdays and Sundays. And with Juhi Chawla, we were talking generation gap. How many of you know what is X generation, Y generation? Anyone? X, Y, Z generation? Can you Google it? Yeah, wonderful. I have one lady. Yeah, very nice. I am X generation. Y generation is somebody who is just getting into the medical college stream, etc. They have written age group, etc. I don't want to confuse a lot of. Z generation is which is still coming up. X generation, very rigid. They always thought life has to go in a very disciplined way. Y generation want to experiment everything themselves, and that's why I belong to Gurgaon, has maximum live-in relationship in Gurgaon, Y generation. They want to experiment in it. Materialistic, excited, burn out faster, and want to achieve, good achiever, achieve but no peace. Z generation, I have a small granddaughter. One day she asked me, what are you doing? I said, doing this, that. Then I explained to her. She plays tablets, she does all that, which I may not know so many things. I said, when I was a student, I used to go on cycle. There was no telephone, even landline was a luxury. There was no TV. And at the end of the story, she says, I say, you just want tablet, you go by car, driver drops you, all this. What is this? I say, Grandpa, what a miserable life you had. I don't know who is miserable. Why I'm saying, innovations are done lot by Y generations. It shall also be done by quite a bit on Z generation. And Sadhguru says today morning, good, all the newer generation, but I can assure you after 50 years of time, there'll be, most of the people will be committing suicide. Because he brought a figure that all the murders and everything together, and the unnatural death, the suicide still tops it. Now let us see that. Yeah, I still got 5 minutes, don't worry. Now we have said innovation excellence. It is for developed economy, emerging economy, and collaborative approach, and that's innovation excellence. Now here I would like to tell you is when we say innovation excellence, you would also know that we have to set objective. It is an excellence model with innovation. We have combined it, develop innovative strategy, identify your breakthroughs, create innovative team. Collaborative approach is the one which is being thought of the best today. That's why Narayana Hrujale with Accession has opened something in Cayman Island. I was recently there, a hospital. Accession has got 18,000 beds, not-for-profit organization. Now here what youngsters are doing in Indian context. I don't know if you have read in the newspaper, There are plenty of such examples are there. Young lady doing in Harvard her MBA with one IIT fellow there. Harvard gives 10 Best Innovative Award. The lady got award. First, there are 10 awards. And first 2 Indians got this award. And the project called Sathi. What she prepared, she saw as a lady, what we require is something for the ladies. And she brought out a sanitary napkin of 2 rupees made out of the banana stem peel, gave it to the village woman, how to make it, etc. And it is the now global news. Of course, Western world is not going to use it. They can afford a branded one better. But you must understand that it is $940 million US business in sanitary pads in India. And many of these ladies are not using it in a rural setting, and they are given free of such by various state governments. I am giving it this just in one innovation. And 15 billion loss of work because ladies is confined for those days at home, etc., etc. So she decided, young lady, to have it. And this is Harvard Award player now. There are hundreds of such examples which the Westerners are looking for. At India, frugal innovation, how to cut down the cost, improve quality. They will not adopt everything, but many of these things they will adopt. There's a publication on Narayan Hridayalaya, there's a publication on Arvindai, which are well set, such things. And they find we are not looking for volume, but we are looking how we can cut down the cost by innovative method which India is bringing. And there's a lot of excitement on this issue. This is my last slide before I have another. This is what Alexander Blas, CEO, Innovation Institute of US, I was talking to him. Ultimately, this thing published, and winner of Top Innovator of the Year award. It is no secret because I coaxed him what India is, and I told him that kindly publish it in the newspaper. It came in newspaper as part of the interview. It is no secret. Many of the world top innovators come from India. What a pride, start from Aryabhata till today. And there are many young Sathis in Aryabhata I see, which will come up in future. Within the past few decades, India has embarked upon an incredible transformation from an agrarian-based society to a knowledge-based economy. Along with the population growth came survival instinct. That's why the innovations were brought. And the need to be different, better, and unique. One can see innovation everywhere in India, whether in large game-changing innovation that garner lots of publicity, or in less obvious yet important incremental fashion. I always feel good when the people from the West tell about India, and I tell them what Aryabhata has done. And this is the last comment. I think many of you, please have innovators. There is a government of India who have 5,000 crore. Start up, incubate your ideas, and take benefit to the population, cut down costs, improve quality. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm privileged to be here, and I thank AHA for giving me this opportunity to be here with all of you on this Sunday morning. My topic is, does JCI accreditation guarantee patient satisfaction? So I think we have, in the previous talk by Dr. Pawan, he has covered what is accreditation. We have talked about NABH. So slightly about JCI now. So if you look at accreditation, accreditation is a voluntary process. What does accreditation achieve? This is internally as well as externally. We all know that internally there is clarity of roles, there is focus on quality, there is standardization of service delivery. Externally, it is a stamp of quality, and it is also something which insurers are looking for. It is also an attraction for the professionals. Many professionals would like to work in an accredited organization. So this is what accreditation achieves internally as well as externally. Coming to what is JCI accreditation. So this is the journey of Joint Commission. In 1910, there was a concern of quality of hospital care in the US. In 1918, American College of Surgeons, they started the first hospital standardization program. In 1951, Joint Commission was born. Joint Commission initially was restricted to the US. They accredited organizations or healthcare organization across US, around 20,000 healthcare organizations across US. And in 1994, the international arm was born. That is the JCI, or Joint Commission International, was established. Currently, in 2014, they have come out with their 5th edition. And there are 90 plus countries which are accredited by Joint Commission International. You have 675 organizations that are accredited across these 90 countries. In India, there are 21 hospitals which are accredited by JCI. Little bit brief on how many chapters. There are 14 chapters now, currently in the 5th edition, and 1,300 standards. What are the different chapters? The 14 chapters. The book is divided into 2 sections, that is the patient-centered standards and the organization-centered standards. In the 5th edition, there's also a section on what is accreditation participation requirements, that is called as the APR section. So look at the patient-centered standards, that is international patient safety goals, access to care, patient and family rights, assessment of patient, care of patient, anesthesia and surgical care, medication management and use, patient and family education. The healthcare organization standards, QPS, PCI, governance and leadership, facility management, staff qualification, management of information. The topic is how does JCI guarantee patient satisfaction, or does it? That is what I'm supposed to be talking about. So I'm not going too much into details about JCI. So we'll look at what is patient satisfaction. What are the drivers for patient satisfaction? So these are a couple of studies which are there in literature. Obviously patients are worried about waiting time. They are worried about, cleanliness of the unit. They are worried about what is the behavior of the doctors, how well they explain. They are also worried about the skills of the doctors. So these are the various levers or drivers for patient satisfaction. So some of the levers which I have chosen to talk upon today is, obviously the patient is concerned about clinical outcomes. Anybody or everybody who goes to hospital is worried about what is going to be the clinical outcome. What is the success rate of the treatment? Is there any alternative? What are the risks? What are the benefits? They are also worried about their experience with the doctors. They want to understand whether, the clinicians explain me properly. They are also very much, important for them is the nursing care, because nurses are the one who spend the entire day with the patient. Then the diagnostic experience, very important, and paramedical staff. Apart from that, at the periphery, there is a support staff in the hospital. That is the F&B department, the billing department, the maintenance, housekeeping. So the patient is also touched by these departments. What are the common patient feedbacks? We all hear this. I went to the hospital for knee problem. It did not sort of satisfy. The pain still continues. You have bad experience with the clinicians. You have bad experience. You don't get lab reports on time. Doctor do not explain, all the tests, why the test is required, was it justified, what is the cost. I was given 4 units of blood. It was not explained to me prior to surgery. Bad experience with nursing. Nurses pricked me 3 times. With housekeeping, I'm sure it was not clean. With F&B, food was not hot. Dietitian did not meet me. Bad experience with billing. I'm sure that's the biggest challenge, that, the bills are very high, but I'm still not happy. So how is JCI accreditation going to help us to get to patient satisfaction? Most of these patient expectations, the ones which I listed out, or the complaints which I listed out, are captured in the JCI standards. And JCI standards will make you, makes SOPs or policies or protocols based on the standards. If you want to achieve JCI accreditation, one will have to implement those standards. One will have to conduct training on those standards. And then you will achieve compliance on the standards. And when you achieve compliance, obviously the surveyors are going to come and evaluate you. They will score you. You need to score a rating of 8 on all the chapters. On all the 14 chapters, you need to get a score of 8 on 10, and that is when you get accredited. And the JCI survey also emphasizes on patient satisfaction. That means they will do patient interviews. So if you actually pass in your patient interviews, that's when the survey process is successful. So there are a couple of patient interviews which are done by the surveyors. The focus of accreditation is on patient safety and patient education. Coming to the driver one, the best outcomes. So what does JCI standard want us to do? They want us to have monitoring of clinical outcomes. You need to have excellent clinical programs. Excellent clinical program means you need to have good medical staff, credentialed medical staff who are going to implement those clinical programs. There is a requirement for care pathways. There is a requirement for measuring yourself. There should be 5 clinical measures which you actually choose from the JCI library of measures to actually measure your outcomes. Obviously, there is an emphasis on healthcare associated infections. You need to minimize the healthcare associated infection. Naturally, from the patient point of view, what are you achieving? You are achieving good outcomes. You are achieving shorter length of stay. Good outcomes means shorter length of stay. Good outcomes means that the patient has to pay the amount that has been agreed upon. You know, there is no excess financial burden to the patient. So just trying to give you one example of the JCI standard. This is in the governance and leadership or direction. This standard talks about you have to select and implement clinical practice guidelines and clinical pathways. If you look at the measurable element, on an annual basis, each hospital has to choose 5 priorities. So 5 priority areas which will focus on clinical practice guidelines. If you want to comply with this standard, you need to choose the 5 priority areas. One example of how the clinical outcomes can be captured. This is for CABG. How do you quantify better clinical outcomes? This is one of the studies which is published by JCI on its website. It was a pilot study in Spain, and it demonstrated that in a JCI accredited hospital, they achieved an annual saving of 2 million and because of shorter length of stay, and 77,000 euros were saved because of decreased cesarean section. So you can quantify your clinical outcomes as well. This is one example of that. The other requirement is reduction of your hospital acquired infection rate. So this is JCI standard PCI 6.1. Obviously, it expects that the hospital should track its infection and track infections for respiratory, for urinary, intravascular, surgical, and emerging and re-emerging infections in the community. So this is how we are going to achieve it. We will track our rates on COTI, and you will have to benchmark your rates, and you have to be on a continuous improvement so that you bring down your rate below the bench. We have talked about now clinical outcomes. The second driver for patient satisfaction is experience with the clinicians. How do you better our experience with the clinicians? What do the patients expect? The patients expect that they are better informed, they are better involved in the care. So if you look at the JCI standard, which is PFR 2.1 and PFR 1.3, in PFR 2.1, it expects that patients are informed of their medical condition, they are informed about the planned care, they are informed about when they have to give informed consent. Also, they are informed about the expected outcomes, unanticipated outcomes. Very important that patients are informed about the unanticipated outcomes of the treatment, and also the family is part of the decision making. So this is the standard one has to achieve. Similarly, JCI standard 1.3, it talks about patient's privacy, it talks about confidentiality, it talks about how are we going to respect their personal values and belief systems. It also talks about pain management and compassionate care at end of life. Very important when the patient is dying, it is important to the family, how we take care of the family, how we convey the message, and how we actually support them in those times of crisis. So how are we going to achieve? When we want to achieve JCI accreditation, we are going to have information brochures, we are going to have consent forms which are specific to the procedure and which actually outlines the complications, risks, benefits and alternatives. There will be plenty of patient education material, lot of emphasis on awareness programs and training and induction of the consultants, that this is a requirement which they need to understand. So some examples of information brochures, awareness campaigns, and something like an orientation to the hospital, a service directory by which you inform them what is going to happen in the hospital, right from taking consent to the billing to, the discharge process. This is with the Community Connect. You can have, this is one of the things that Fortis is having, Sunday conversations. So you can see the topic is what can infection lead to. So you are actually educating the patients. The third driver is experience with the nursing staff. So you can look at the standards. The standards expect that the nursing staff should be actually, their credentials should be verified, their education, training and experience. There is also a standard on individualized initial assessment for special population. So what do you mean by special population? The geriatric and the pediatric. How well are we going to care for them? So how are we going to achieve this? You can have a senior citizens program where you can, extend some benefits. At the same time, you are looking after their safety. So this is what you can do. Have these wheelchairs, walkers near the OPD, fall prevention, educate the patient, fall prevention posters. This is one of the testimonial by a patient. The fourth driver, experience with diagnostics. Very commonly seen. You have to wait for, your lab reports. So obviously JCI is addressing that. They are looking at laboratory results are available in timely manner. Same for radiology. So this is one of the ways in which you can monitor and you can give your reports on time. And here we are trying to give the reports within 15 minutes of completion. Obviously it required some changes that had to be done. And there was an overall satisfaction by the patient as well as by the department when they were able to achieve that. Fifth lever is with the F&B department. Obviously F&B department, it is expected risk of infections and operations of food service is clean. This is how you can achieve it. Better sanitation, training on infection control practices. This is one of the project that was done where you had delay in service, quality of food and issues related to hygiene. This was the impact of the project. You could see that definitely the patient satisfaction with F&B has gone up. Patient safety, it is considered to be integral part of the entire care. Patients are not aware that there can be harm in the hospital, but it is considered to be integral, that you don't go to hospitals to get harmed. So everybody knows that JCI has a lot of emphasis on international patient safety goals. You can see identify patients correctly, safe surgery checklist. What else is done? Training on fire, disaster, bomb threats. So finally, patients benefit. They are the biggest beneficiary. Their rights are protected. Their satisfaction is regularly evaluated. In an accredited hospital, there is emphasis on patient safety, patient rights, control and prevention of infection, and practicing of good patient protocols, better and controlled clinical outcome. Lastly, I would like to quote one paper. This is a full research paper. This was done to study the impact of status of hospital accreditation on patient satisfaction with obstetric and gynecology clinic in Eastern Province, Saudi Arabia. This was done for outpatient as well as inpatient. Total of 420 patients, 5-point Likert scale was used, and the result shows that significant difference in patient satisfaction between the accredited and non-accredited. So 200 patients from one accredited and 200 from the non-accredited organization were taken, and they were evaluated on clinical care, facilities, professionalism, in ultrasound professionalism in the lab, and overall satisfaction. You can see there is a marked difference in the clinical care between the accredited and non-accredited. These are the results. Thank you.